All right, friends, welcome. We are in, if you can believe it, we're already in week 11. Charlotte and I were talking earlier in office hour, but really this is kind of the flow and how much longer we have left. We have this week, we're going to really focus on relationships. So we've already created a video game project that we have CRUD capabilities of. We're going to go in and add a user to that. We're going to go modify our ERD, add a user, forward engineer it, and then we're going to be able to do a couple things, right? We're going to be able to add a user and then also be able to kind of relate a user to a game and kind of go backwards that way. And it's going to be quite nice. It's going to be fun. It's going to be this one-to-many relationship. That's what we're going to do this week. We probably won't have an algo just because this week is pretty big. It's pretty heavy. And there's just a lot of stuff. I want to make sure we take our time. But next week is a lot easier. We start building in some validations. Really, this is validating data that's coming into from our forms, making sure that people are not putting bad data. And we'll be able to have an algo this week because validations aren't crazy. The next week is login and registration. So we'll be filling or kind of be finishing this registration part or creation, if you will. So we're going to add on a piece the way we can actually log in and register and see how that goes. Today, we'll probably just create a register, which is just creating a user, but we'll morph that into a login and registration, being able to retrieve that information. The third week, so in 3 more weeks, is just our belt prep week. And if you can see, then the belt exam opens. So we are only 3 weeks away from our belt exam opening. We are moving quickly. You do have 2 assignments, 2 core assignments this week. Or just one, sorry, Dojos and Ninjas. It's one that has a one-to-many relationship. You have to add this stuff together. And then you have a discussion question as always. So please make sure you guys do that. Books is a great practice assignment. So that's why it's noted here. I would encourage you guys, if you have the time, if you have the capabilities, also do books, just getting this practice of handling kind of these one-to-many relationships will be really handy for you. Okay. Any questions on that?
I have a question, Will.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with week 9,
Mm-hmm.
so I was just watching the video and I was just coding along.
Uh-huh.
Every everything went well. So when I came to my database, I can't see like the form that I filled in the database.
You can't see the information.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So is that
Yeah.
something to help me out later on, maybe?
Yeah, either later on or yeah, I can do that later on. I probably can't tonight, but Thursday, absolutely. Maybe we can sit and I'll re-go through sort of some of this information. And
Yeah.
as we're creating our user, and if it answers your question, great. And if not, either create a one-on-one with me, put it in Discord or Thursday, or we can talk about it this week for sure. We want to make sure that that's a huge one.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
want to
Yeah.
make sure that that
Yeah,
is
because like
we have the
I could do it like when I hadn't like upgraded to macOS.
Mhm.
Yeah, but since I upgraded to macOS, I was doing everything, but when I was getting there, like I couldn't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. What I want to, yeah, we'll make sure we fix that. What I want to do is I'm going to go into my actual file here. So give me just 1 second. Let me, on my other one, I want to open my MWB file. A workbench file. Okay. So here we have my workbench. Now we are, the idea is that what we want to do is we want to create a relationship, or we want to sort of update our application to have the following. Right now, we just are able to create a game, and that's it, right? And that's awesome. That's great. What we'll want to do, though, is what if we wanted to create a game, but we wanted to know which user created each game. So let's say it's an application that users can go on and put their favorite games, and then I could click on one user and I could see all of their favorite games or all the games that they created. Um, And so what we're going to do is we're going to build out my user table. So we're going to kind of build out the things that we need, and then we're going to create a relationship. So from here, can anybody tell me how to build out my user table? What am I going to do? I'm in my MWB.
I think you're gonna go to the table right here.
Mm-hmm.
Click on that,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
then that will be the user table.
Yeah.
And
So I'm say
then
users. Now, what is my user going to have? They're going to have an ID always, right? We need some unique identifier. And then what's the other box? We have this as primary key, can't be null, but what's the other box we're going to have?
AI.
It's
Yeah,
the
AI,
the
right?
auto increment.
Auto increment, because we want our ID to keep going up. Great job. We're going to have a first name for our user. Let's just have their first name. Varchar, again, that's just characters. Let's make it 105, just in case somebody has a long name. And then we've got a last name. Again, I'm going to make it 105. They're going to have an email address. That can be varchar. And then let's say they wanted to create a password. Because we're gonna end up doing this anyway. So might as well kind of build this out, and then we'll just keep morphing and kind of changing this as well. Password varchar, let's put, I don't know, 45 characters is insane, so that's fine. Email, I might put a little bit more, just because sometimes people have really long emails. So maybe I'll put 90. Okay. And then we need our, what's the other two that we need?
Created that and updated that.
Yep, exactly. And these are date times. I'd probably rather click it. Date time. And then do you remember what I can put here or what I can do? If I right click,
It should be the
It-
timestamp.
yeah, current timestamp, right? This is what it defaults and automatically does it for us. If I didn't do this, I'd have to put the now whenever I'm calling it in my query. I'd have to put now, but because I did this, I just right click here and then it tells me what it is. Now, it obviously didn't do this immediately, but I have to say updated at, and then this has to be a date time. And once it becomes date time, then I can right click and now I have some of these others. And so on updated at, I have this current timestamp on update current timestamp. So what this does is it means that it's updating every time, anytime it's updated, it's going to take the current timestamp. And so again, this is just having MySQL handle this for us. I don't have to do it. Cool. So I have everything I need. I've got my updated at, that's not anything. I've created at, updated at, email, first name, last name, password, and an ID. Now, when I'm creating these relationships, I'm going to have this one-to-many relationship where I'm going to grab this, and then I click on my mini, and then I click on my one, and then it will create something that looks like this. Now, what is a one-to-many relationship? If you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it. In this scenario, a user can create many games, but a game can only be created by one user. That's what we call a one-to-many. A user can create many, many games, but a game can only be created by one user, right? An instance of a game. And so with that, we have something called a user ID, right? This is our foreign key, is user's ID. And what we typically do is we change this to user, just a singular version of whatever this table is. User underscore ID is an integer, it is a key, and it cannot be null. Cool. This is what we call a foreign key. So the next thing to do, so we have this, we're good here, is we go to this foreign keys right here. And on delete, oops, I'm gonna click that. it shows, okay, for this foreign key of games users, right? Games to users. For users ID, the reference column is the ID of the user is going to match there, right? That's what's associating the two. What we can put is this on delete, we put cascade. Now what that means is if I delete a user, I want to delete every game associated to that user. You don't have to do this. You know, if there's sometimes like a Reddit post or something and maybe it's there, but it says that the user is no longer there, right? That's just a way that like it wasn't on Cascade. But this is to say, hey, if I delete a user, delete every game that's associated to that user. So if we're thinking about this table here, again, we just have the normal stuff, the game's ID, the title, the rating, the platform, development studio, created at, updated at, but it also has this user's ID or this field that is going to allow us to connect which user in our database created that game. Does that make sense?
Sorry, can you repeat again, please?
Yeah, of course. What my foreign key does is it allows for me to identify what user created what game. So let's hypothetically say we've got, let me annotate here. Grab my annotation tools. We've got this rectangle, and this is representing game, right? And this other rectangle is representing a user. These are two separate tables, right? They're two separate entities, they're two separate things. If you remember from a couple weeks ago, what a foreign key does is it allows us to take this table and let's say that this first column here is ID on the left. And what it does is it allows us to take this table and combine the two tables together. Meaning that right here, this sort of Venn diagram looking thing, on my right table, that's going to be my user's ID. And on my red table, that's going to be my user's, or this is the ID for my user in my blue. And then in my red, this portion is the ID associated to my user here. And so it allows us to basically link and say, well, which user created this? And then I can go into my database and say, well, the user that has this ID. Right? It's connecting these two values. This connects to this. It's going to take the user's ID and it's going to put it on my game. So that way I can know which user created which game. Okay. So let's forward engineer this. Cool. Forward engineer successfully. So now if we come here, let's go home. Open it up. Got this game DB.
Well, I have a
So-
question.
Yeah.
You know how you didn't close the EER diagram when we first created it?
Mhm.
Once you go home, then you open it as a local instance, right? As a database. Is there a way to go back to the EER?
There's not. So that's why we would want to. That's why we would want to save this, save model. And that's your MWB. That's the file I click to open this up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank
So let's try something. I might just real quickly drop this schema. Okay. Great. So now if I forward engineer. I go back to my local instance and I refresh. I now have game DB, tables, games. Cool. That's got it all. And I've got nothing in there. Okay. Oh, well, let's try this. Okay, yeah, there's nothing in there, but now I have this value. Okay, so now my database is set up. Now let's go in and actually, I have this other users portion. So let's actually go and create some users. So I'm gonna open up my code, my database, I'm gonna set that to the side. And we currently have quite a bit of things, right? We have our video game class. If you remember from the modularize, let's kind of go through that again. On Friday, we modularized all of our code. It means we broke out our server and any sort of functionality, routing, any sort of sending anything to a model that goes into my controller. My model is still, we still had that video game file, but now we have it in this models folder here. And so what this does is this, again, just sort of abstracts everything into one sort of area for video game specifically. And then my connection file, that connects to this config. Jeffrey, one thing you might want to check, that you were having issues, is to check your password works. If it's not the right password, again, you have to use user and password. If they're not the right ones, it's not going to connect to your database. This is what's establishing our connection. And then our templates is here, right? We have a dashboard, edit game, index. I will pull this open. So that I will start this. So that way we can. And then lastly, what we did is we also created within our Flask app, we created this init py that actually has our Flask. Okay. Great. So if I go to localhost 5000, this is what we currently have. We have this welcome to Video Game Palace, this dashboard that has nothing because we just sort of cleared and redid our database. And so let's go ahead and create, now that we have this user, let's go ahead and set that up. So where do you guys think we would start? What could we do? What do you think we would need to do to set this up?
What do you mean set it up?
Like
so
now we
add
have,
users?
yeah, so great question. We currently have a video game, right? We have this new database that's got two tables, users and games. We already have games taken care of already. We've done that. It works. We can create it, we can read it, we can update it, and we can delete. So that's awesome. So this portion of this table is done. So maybe we should build out this user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new model. So I'm going to say user.py. Now it's going to be the same things. We still need this from game app, config, MySQL connection. We still need that. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to build out our class. And so what you can do is kind of look and say, what do I have? I know that we have a first name, last name, email, password. I know that, but if you didn't really know that, you can put them side by side sort of thing. But let's create this class similar to how we did here, where I'm going to have a class of user. Then I'm going to have my init. This is my video games. I'm going to have my def dunder init, right? This is my, does anybody remember what this is called? What is this function called? Starts with a C.
Constructor.
Yeah.
Constructor. Yeah, exactly. Right. This is my constructor of my class. So anytime we're calling that class, it's going to run this. So I have my def dunder init. And actually what I'll do is I'll just put these side by side so we can make sure that we're taking care of it. Okay. So I have my def dunder, init, dunder. Then it's going to take in self and data. Then what we're going to have is we're going to have a self dot ID equals data of ID. We've got a, you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. My wife might be locked outside. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to pause the recording. Give me just one second.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so here we are. Well, okay. No GPT today. That's okay. So we have our self ID. We know that we're going to need a self dot first name, right? It's going to be equal to data of first name. We know that we're going to have the same thing for last name. So I'm just going to go change this to last name. We also said we're going to have a self dot email, right? Is to data of email. Then we've got a self dot password. Again, data of password. That's why I love ChatGPT, because all this stuff is super redundant. You got a self dot created at equals data of created at. And then lastly, we have a self dot updated at data of updated at. Okay. So we know that this is good. Why is this not working? I'm not sure. Still works. I don't know why. Okay. So we know that we've created our user. We are A-okay here. Now what I will do is I'm going to go over to my controller and I'm going to create a user controller. So I'm just going to say this users.py. Right. And then if I open up, and again, you can kind of just use this as a reference. I can take really all of these things, or really these first two things, and say here. And then I can say from game underscore app dot models dot user import user. So now I can start setting up, okay, any sort of routes that I wanted to have, right? Now I don't need two separate routes for like the slash. It doesn't need that. It is good to go. It's okay. But in order for my routes to be taken care of, I need to say from game app controllers, import video games, comma users, right? So now in my server PY, I can go in and it's going to be able to look at both of these routing or both of these controllers, which is where all of my routes live. So that's one thing you have to do in your server PY is you have to go in and add that. Cool. So I can say is something like app.route. And then maybe I want it to be slash user. And maybe this is going to take me to kind of a landing page, if you will, to where I can create a new user. I think that sounds like a pretty good idea for, especially for where we're at just right now. So I'm going to say def, and we can call this whatever we want. I might call it like user page. It's not going to take in anything. It's just going to, all it's going to do is return, render, template. What do I want to return? I'm going to say user form.html, which we don't have. Cool. And so now I've created my model, right? I've created my user model. I don't have any sort of functionality yet, but I've created it. I've created my user controller. Again, not doing a ton here. Just all I'm doing is if I go to localhost 5000/user, I'm going to bring up some user form HTML. And now you might ask yourself, well, we don't have a user form HTML, and you would be super correct. We don't. So I'm going to create it. Cool. Cool. So I'm bringing this in. I'm going to go to my edit game. That's going to have this right here. I can just bring in Bootstrap. Cool. I don't need this. I don't need this. Now what I can do is I can actually create my user form, right? So I'm going to say dot container. And then this is where we're going to create our form. So I'm going to really kind of cheat here and just take this form. And then I'm just going to show that. Now there's things that, and it's okay to sort of like reuse your own code. There's even things within HTML that's a little bit more advanced for what we're trying to do here. But you can actually like just create templates and then just bring those in, but we're not going to focus on that. But it's okay to recreate your code. You just have to go in and make sure that you know kind of what you're doing. Or you have to go and make sure everything is changed, right? So here I don't need a value. I don't have a preset value of what it's going to be. And here instead of title, I'm going to say first name. And then here I'm going to say last name. Perfect. And again, we'll get rid of this value. Value is really something that if we are editing, it's going to come in handy, but not really anything else here. We're going to have an email. And then lastly, we need our password. I'm actually going to change the type to password. Little key thing, if you guys are ever, I don't know if you guys are like me and sometimes you forget your password or your password manager doesn't work or something. If you're ever putting in a password and it auto populates, but you have no idea what it is and you can't copy and paste, you can actually just go in to your code like this. Watch, I'll show you here in a second. Let's just actually get this up and running. Yep, and then we just say create user. But I'll show you kind of a sneaky way to kind of understand what your password is. Okay, so we have our form. And the last thing we need to do is when this is submitted, what do we want to do? Now, right now, I'm okay with it just being like this. That's not going to work, right? But so once I submit it, it's not going to work, but I just kind of want to see what it looks like. So if I go to this, and I say /user, I get a error. Oh, it's because I copy and pasted and I'm referring to game here. And the game underscore ID, that's what I was referring to. And it's saying, I don't know what that is. You didn't give me that information. So I am just going to go ahead and change this. And I'm going to say user/create. Go back. Go to user. And now we get our form. Now what I was showing you is, let's say, for instance, you have some sort of password. Like here, I've got this, use this password. And let's say it auto generates. You're like, oh man, I don't know how to do that. Or I don't know what this is. And you copy it and it won't work. You can just go in and inspect. Click this. And then change this to text. And it'll show you your password just temporarily. And you can be like, ah, okay. and then you can grab it. I do it all the time. If my password doesn't work. Cool.
Trick. Thank
Yeah,
you.
fun little trick, yeah. So then we'll also have a H1 that says create a user. Cool. So we're going to create our user. And they're going to go to, once we do that, once we fill out the form, it's going to go to user/create, but we don't have that. So where would I go? Because remember, when I click this form, it's going to bundle all this information into a request and send it here. Where do I need to go to create this?
The route,
Yeah,
the controller.
the controller. Now I don't have a user/create, do I?
Mm-mm, not at
No.
all.
So what I can do is, let's pull this up a little bit. Is I can create that app.route. And it's going to be /user/create. And then what else do I need to do? If it's a form?
Oh, it has to be post.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if you look here in our video games, anytime we have a post, we do a comma, methods equals post. I'm just gonna copy that. Come here. Perfect. And then we can do a def create user. That's gonna take in nothing, right? It doesn't take in anything. It's just a request. And so now I need to grab my data from my user or from my form. How am I going to do that? What would I do here? What would you guys do here?
You'll have to write data
Yeah.
equals and then the curly brackets
Yep.
and then whatever it is you're pulling. So like right there you have
Yeah.
first name, last name, and I think email and password.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And,
what you'll put there.
and
And
then
you
what's on the
put
right?
the request form, request dot
Yeah. Request.form of
and what you're
first name.
pulling.
Now, where does this value come from? Anybody remember? What is this value coming from?
It's from the actual form that you just created.
Yeah, it's from my input name. That's exactly right. Right here. So this is really important. This has to match whatever this request.form is. So if you in your form say f_name, but here you say first name, you're not going to get a value because it's looking for the keys. Remember, whenever we get a request and we take in a request from our form, it's giving us keys and values, a key value pair. And it's going to look for the key of f_name. Or in this case, it's going to look for the key of first_name. But if we called it f_name, it's going to say, I don't know what first_name is. That's not in my form. So we have to make sure that everything here on the right matches the name in my form. Just as a little reminder for you guys. Cool. So yeah, same thing. Then I'm going to say last name is going to be request .form of last name. Then I've got an email. Is request .form of email. And then we've got a password. Is going to be a request .form of password. Cool. So I've grabbed all the information from my form. And now what do I want to do with that? I've grabbed it from my form. I have it packaged into this variable called data. What would I want to do next to it? What do I want to do next with it? What are we trying to accomplish here?
if I'm not mistaken, whatever you have on your let me think. Not the class. Is it the class?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you wrote on the class, it has to match as well.
Yeah.
I know everything has to match for
Yeah.
sure. I
Everything
learned
has to
that the hard
match.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. But kind of like what you said, I've packaged up the data. Now, where do I need to send it? What am I wanting to do? Like, what am I trying to accomplish in this app? I'm trying to create a user. So what am I trying to do?
So um you're gonna be collecting that data, you're gonna return and redirect it to wherever or
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
redirect it to wherever the page that you created, which is um I don't know, I guess the user page once it's done creating it.
Yeah. And so I think that's the point is how do I create it? Right? Yes, you're exactly right. After this, we redirect. But how would I create? Like, how do I, what is the process of creating? I packaged up the data. Where do I send it?
I guess it'll be like wherever I think it's like wherever your class information, like if you put user equals to
Mhm.
um I don't
Yeah.
know.
I need to create, I think that's
You have to
exactly,
create another class, no?
yeah,
If I'm not mistaken.
not another class. I
A
create a method, right?
method, thank you. That's
Yeah.
right.
So just like we have in our video game, here is my class. Here's what my class can do. So if I'm wanting to create a user, here I've got create game, right? Now let's put this side by side. And what I'm wanting to do is really emulate this, right? I just want to do the same thing. The process is we're bundling up the data and we're wanting to send it to my database to save it. That's kind of the question I was asking. We are bundling up our data here. Say, cool, our data is bundled up. We have it. Now I actually want to do the process of saving it. And so what we'll do is we're going to write this method and then we will end up running that or calling that or invoking that method. So we're going to say def create user. Now it's going to take in it's CLS because it's a class method and it's going to take in some data, right? Because we have to give it that data I just bundled up in order to handle it. Now, one thing I want to really make clear, this data is just a value or a variable. We're saying, hey, whatever this method gets, we're going to refer to it as data. This could be unicorn, it could be cupcake, it doesn't matter, right? So though the value of this, it's receiving this data and then we're calling it data here, I could call this unicorn. And as long as I pass in unicorn, I can still call this data and it's still going to work, right? It's just, again, anytime we call a function and we give it values, the parameter name is just what we name whatever we received. It doesn't have any correlation with the name of whatever we received, if that makes sense. Cool. So we have that. We're not utilizing it yet. So let's create our query. That's going to be just like this. We say insert into. Now we're inserting into users. And I've got a first name, a last name, an email, and a password. I say values, and then I pass in actual values. Now, anybody remember where do these values come from? Or in this case, if I say first name, last name, email, password, what are these referring to? You said it a little bit earlier, Strella. It's these keys.
Oh, I was
So
like,
whatever you call them on my left. So remember, this on the right refers to whatever I called it in my HTML. Now, on my left is what I refer to it as in my class. So if I called that first name and I called this F name, here I would say F name. because I'm giving it my data and it's going to look for a key of F name. So I'm going to keep it as first name because I think that that is better. And so all we do is we do our percent sign. We do our key. And then we do an S, comma, and then we do a percent sign, the key. So in this case is last name. And an S. Email. And last one for password. Cool. Now, as a reminder, had I not, if I would not, in my EER, and I created my user, I put this current timestamp. If I did not put that, then here, I would have had to say current time, or, you know, created at, updated at. So I'd have to say something like created at, updated at. And then I would have had to put
No.
now. What this is saying, because remember here, we did this as a default value, right? So it's going to default and it's going to handle it for us. If I didn't do that, and that's okay, you don't have to, then we do have to give it a time, right? And so what it's going to say is, hey, also, I want you to do this. And the values, or these are the kind of attributes within my table that I want to target. The values is this now, and that's going to get the current timestamp for MySQL. So it's doing the same thing. Just if you don't do the default value, remember the way you do it is you just right click and then click it. If you don't do that, then you have to put the now. If you do it, then you don't have to put those. Just one less thing you have to put. Cool. So now we've created our query. We go here. We can kind of use this again as our sort of light right now. There's kind of two ways I could do this. I could say, let's do this. I could say something like user ID equals connect to MySQL game underscore DB, right? Dot, because it's a chained method, query DB, and then I'm going to pass in the query and data. Cool. Then I can return user ID. Now this is actually what is executing my code, right? It's executing my query call. And then if you remember in our config file, it says that when we insert, it's going to return the ID number of the row inserted, or whatever we just created. It's going to give us back that ID. And so that's why I can say return user ID. And then when I'm actually calling it, that's what I'm going to get back, right? The other way I could do it is to just not do this and say return. Because they're doing sort of this. I mean, they're doing the exact same thing. And this also does, this accomplishes the same thing. It's still returning the user ID. I just didn't create a variable. Both would be fine. Both work exactly, literally exactly the same. But for the sake of this, I'll do it this way, just because that's how we did it the other side, and we keep your standards good. Okay. So we have our query. That's awesome. But now we need to be able to call it, right? So I'm just going to say user ID equals user, my capital U, because I'm calling my class, dot create user, and I pass in data. Right? I'm going to pass in this data that I just created to this method called create user right here. It's going to run this and it's going to give me some value back. The value back is the ID. So then my user ID equals the ID, excuse me, of that user. And then just like Shaw said, I could say return redirect. And let's say I just want to redirect to user/dashboard. I don't have a user/dashboard. So let's go ahead and create one. And maybe this is just one that's dot route. And then maybe we just say user/dashboard. And then we say def user dashboard. Not taking in anything. And then I can say return render template. For right now, I'm just going to say user dashboard. HTML. And we're just going to do an H1 that says in user dashboard, and then we'll check our data, make sure we're good. Cool. So let's go ahead and build that user dashboard. I never spelled board right. HTML. See, I never spell it right. That and function, I can never spell either of those right the first time. Okay. So now the workflow is, if we go to this /user, it's going to bring up our user form. We fill out the user form. And once we submit it, it goes to user create, where we grab that data from my form. I take that data and I pass it and invoke the create user method on my user class, and I give it that data that I grabbed. This create user method is going to create this query. It's going to connect to our database and then execute our query, right? It's going to actually insert. It's going to return back a user ID, which we just create this variable user ID, but we're not doing anything with it. So once that's done, if this is successful, we will then redirect to user/dashboard, which is just a route that is going to bring up an HTML that says in user dashboard. But whenever we query our database, we should be able to see that we have users. Cool. So let's go try it. Are there any questions on that? I'm going to pause there before we try to move forward.
Not at the moment.
Okay. Kevin, Jeffrey, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. Okay, so now we're running. Let's go back to Chrome. Cool, I refresh, create a user. I'm going to say Charlie Calhoun, c@c.com. Gonna create user. Oh, I got an issue. It says URL was not found on the server. If you enter the URL manually, please check again.
Oh, your URL doesn't match somewhere.
Ooh, bummer. User/create. What did we do here? Oh, /user/create. But this is post. Ooh, what happened here? So what I would do is I would first go to my form. And I think the error is that I've got an extra slash here. Because I noticed that I was trying to go to /user/create/, and it says /user/create with no slash. Let's try that. Let's go back and we'll refresh our page. And that was it.
The simplest thing.
The simplest thing, right? So we got here, and if I check this, we see this is green. We ran the query, insert into values, Charlie see password. That was my password. It's not a super secure password. But if I look at my database and actually go to it, my instance, and I'm on my GameDB and I say select all from users. And I run this. Now I get Charlie Calhoun, see password is password, created at and updated. Cool. I think that's good to pause on. What we'll do next, next class is we'll do the created at, we'll do like updated at, or not updated at, we'll do update, which we've already done, so we can kind of go quicker. We'll do update, delete, and reading. And then what we'll do is also, when I'm reading, we'll kind of save that for last. We'll see how we can correlate now, because we're going to have to do what we call a left join. So we have to join the two tables together. So that way I can show all of the video games that Charlie created. So we'll kind of move our app around a little bit. But are there any questions on what we did today? Sort of set it up. We talked about a one-to-many relationship to kind of get you guys going on having two models and trying to interact that way. But are there any questions on what we talked about today?
The only question I have is what app did you download for your words to be different color? Because I have one similar, but it doesn't do them like yours. It doesn't separate like each portion like yours.
Honestly, I have zero idea.
I've been meaning to ask you that.
I'll try to figure it out. Because I think it's in my settings. I'll figure it out and I'll let you know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But
No,
there's
but
tons of different.
yeah, I that's what I was looking, but I haven't found one that does it like each part like yours. That's why.
Sure. Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh,
I didn't add anything. Like if this was standard on VS Code or it had something. So I can't remember, but I'll look into it.
is there an extension?
I
Yeah,
think it's just
that's what I think is. I thought it was an extension because I took one.
I don't. Oh, right here. Or wait. No, I'll look at it. It's not an extension because I'm looking at my extensions and it's just, and I just went through my extensions with another class and there was nothing there. But I can't remember where it was. I have to look at my text theme.
No problem. Well,
Yeah, any other questions? Shift P, color theme. Preferences, color theme. So I'm on dark modern. So do Control
okay.
Shift P. And then this will give you all of the ones you can do. So you could do like dark plus or Control Shift P, color theme. There's like all kinds of different ones. Tomorrow Night Blue. That's actually pretty atrocious. Ew, this is awful. Yeah, so there's you just do
Yeah,
Control
don't do
Shift
that
P
again.
or Command yeah. Control Shift P or Command Shift P. Oh no, I don't. Oh, I think it was dark modern.
The
Oh,
dark
phew.
modern.
Okay, praise. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's what I
Oh,
use.
Cool.
One,
Thank you.
Yeah, of
one,
course.
one question,
You
Will.
guys have a good
Yeah.
one. Oh,
What's the shortcut again to bring in the bootstrap? Because I saw you doing like slash.
I just copy and pasted from another file.
Oh,
Yeah. So I just copy and pasted from a file that I had brought it into. So there's not a shortcut for Bootstrap.
is
You
there?
can,
How do you have a
go ahead.
shortcut for the HTML? Like, what do you write?
You
oh,
just
that's-
write the exclamation point,
that's-
and that's standard.
Oh, okay.
So like, just let's say I had this, and this comes built in. If you just do an exclamation point, just says that.
Okay. I am always copying and pasting.
Yeah, you use to an exclamation point.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Any other questions? Jeffrey, you could create shortcuts if you wanted.
Yeah.
You can look into how to create a keyboard shortcut in VS Code, and so you can actually map if you wanted. Like on my Mac, I have like I think it's Control or Alt B or Option B, and that is a shortcut, and it actually is just my link to Bootstrap. I just don't have that on this one,
Oh,
so you can look into that if you were interested in doing that.
yeah. Thanks for sharing, Will.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions, friends? Okay. Just as a reminder, you've got Dojos and Ninjas is your core assignment this week. You've got one discussion question and you've got a practice with books. So keep on keeping on, my friends. And this is where we're at in the platform. We are working on CRUD. We've already done CRUD. We've already modularized, but right here, we're in this relationships portion. Where we're just, and it talks all about it. Again, kind of handling that. We're gonna look at this next week. Or sorry, on Thursday, where we can have a list of maybe all the games, how we handle that, what we can iterate through, and all that fun stuff. So we will be doing that on Thursday. Cool. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and we will see you in 2 days. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.